This one here, yeah. Great to see all these faces. I'm Ben Falloon, Taranaki Farm. It's sort of a little unusual for me to be, in this sort of urban environment. Typically I'll be walking around the paddocks with a sort of mob of urbanites that come to tour on the farm, and I get to show everything to them in person with all the visceral sounds and smells of the farm. So I'm a little bit like a fish out of water, but we'll see how we go. Taranaki Farm is my family farm. It's been in my family since my great-grandfather. It was a soldier settlement block after World War I, and it was mostly managed by my grandfather for about 50 years. About 7 or 8 years ago, I took a hiatus from my city job and I went and stayed on the farm for a little while. And I was a bit taken aback by the condition of the place. It was my grandfather passed away by that time, and we're in the midst of a drought, and not being a farmer, I wasn't very familiar with the cycles of things, but every year I was expecting the place to get better. As my childhood memories would inspire this every spring you'd see all this growth of grass, and it wasn't happening. It was just this sort of dormant, dead environment. And so it didn't take very long for the land to start to call me to do something about this, being, in my early 30s at the time. And I realised that I'd have to go on a great research trip across the place to find answers for how I could transform this place back to the memory that I had as a child on this farm, planting spuds with my grandfather, moving the cows around and so forth. So without his divine and 50 years of great wisdom, I was forced to go on this research trip, which took me right across all of these different pioneering agricultural figures in alternative agriculture, I guess you'd call it. And ultimately that led me to Joel Salatin, who is now a good friend and mentor of mine. Taranaki Farm is also home of what's called the Polyphase, the Australian Polyphase project, where we have done an awful lot of work on the actual property and orientating everything to the topography of the land, very sensitive water harvesting features and roads and so forth. And the great question became, well, what sort of enterprise would we run inside this newly constructed environment? You'll notice that nothing is really straight on the farm. Everything has been put to the lay of the land with very careful surveying and choices with lots of observation. We've sort of changed the space so that it's more resilient or drought tolerant, where before it was prone to, the slightest drought would really send production right down the hole. But what became really interesting is that in this research trip and in discovering, the Polyphase farming methods of Joel Salatin in Virginia, many of you might be familiar with Joel Food Inc. I mean, he's pretty much the world's most famous farmer now. The poster child of everything that's not industrial. Well, we had to decide what we were going to put inside, so we thought his enterprise would be a great starting point, since we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If we just started working on developing this multi-speciation, getting cows on the property, getting chickens on the property, getting pigs in the forest and so forth, and then moving them all around in an ecological way, biomimicry, where you're observing and you're constantly changing your management style so that you're actually doing things that are a little bit like, how nature would do them anyway. And something fascinating happened to me in the process of doing that, because my primary focus at the time was that I wanted to fix the farm. And then I realised, I now understand the basic principles of regeneration in farming, but to accomplish that, I need more livestock. And so a peculiar thing happened at that point where I had to commercialise the farm. And I realised that in order to correct the problems of the farm, I had to attach the farm to the community. And so from that point in time, I had to start engineering a system that would actually facilitate me to have, say, a mob of 200 cows if I wanted one. Because I know how to use 200 cows to fix a whole lot of land. I might want 300 pigs in the forest, but to get 300 pigs, I have to have customers to support that. So it was wow, to fix the farm, community also has to be fixed as well. And then as a consequence of sharing all of these adventures along the way using social media, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I've done the production models, I know how to run the animals, I know how to move them around, I've seen great results over the years that I've been doing it, and the place is 3 or 4 times productive as it was when I started. And now it's really drought tolerant. Although we've had 4 months of straight no rain, it's been the driest period, since 1932 or something. As soon as we got a rain, all of these different management styles have immediately produced a flush of activity. And so then we put the word out, and this is what was extraordinary. Using social media, suddenly we found that there was an entire city, and in fact the entire state of Victoria, pretty much just put its hand up as soon as I said, who wants to get some food from us? And like within, a couple of weeks, we had 1,700 registrations for our buying club model. It was just shocking. It was more than I, possibly could expect. But our general gist is, and as I'm, getting close to wrapping up, is that we're going to pursue a different model of distribution, leveraging the internet, whereby people will belong to local clubs in their communities that we go on a once-a-month drop site to deliver goods that are ordered online. Now, I've got great faith in this potential. There's a lot of talk last year about the big box businesses, the bricks and mortar stores suffering from the online encroachment, because online is such a convenient way of doing things. And I believe that this system of people conveniently buying in their local areas to clubs where there's a host, where the deliveries are delivered to, is a great way of actually solving that connection of the farm to the culture, but also in that local community, in that suburb or whatever, neighbours will meet neighbours as they actually find out they're all a part of the one club. So it's a really interesting way of how everything connects, as Nick was saying before, of healing those links and making it all come together. And so the answers are out there, and definitely the time is now. I'll wrap it up there. Thank you.